I recognize myself for 5 minutes of questions. Mr. Danley, you spent numerous years at FERC, including as General Counsel, Commissioners, Chairman. Yeah. Last year, the EPA proposed a rule, commonly referred to as the Clean Power Act 2.0, which targets emissions from fossil-fueled fired power plants. On August 8th of last year, you sent a letter to the EPA Administrator Regan stating, and I quote, "While the proposed rule could, by itself, significantly impair reliability, the Commission must also consider the proposed rule amidst the numerous other public policies that increasingly jeopardize the reliable operation of the bulk electric system." Just how severely could the Clean Power Act 2.0 rule, in your opinion, impair grid reliability simply on its own?
As the process was going forward, my concern was that the EPA had not taken into consideration what the reliability consequences of the rule were going to be. And on top of that, and more specifically, there was no inquiry done at the time, and this was adduced on the record during a hearing in front of the Commission during our Reliability Tech Conference. No specific inquiry was made into the effect on the markets. One of the biggest problems with these sort of external effects on the power generation system is that the markets are market mechanisms in which generators have to offer in, and it is on the basis of those offers that are then accepted through this bid stack that clears that the generators ultimately are going to be called upon to deliver power. When you have a very expensive system, a regulatory system that's imposed, that changes all of the pricing that the generators are going to be subject to or going to require in order to remain solvent. And if you don't have a clear view of what is going to happen in the markets, it's going to be very difficult to be certain that you're not going to suffer catastrophic consequences for resource adequacy down the road. So by itself, I think that the Clean Power Plan could potentially create extraordinarily expensive prices in the markets. And what I'm really concerned about is not that, because that's a public policy decision. What I'm concerned about is that it seems to be undertaken without full knowledge of the consequence.
Okay. How much more could the other public policies to which you referred to, like the EPA's EV mandates and large government-funded subsidies for renewables, how could that impact cost and reliability?
So there are a couple of ways. One is the more demand you have, the higher the price goes. That's Econ 101. There's another problem, which is that in order to get hold of the power that would come from the large deployment of renewables that a lot of public policymakers want and expect to have happen, there needs to be a huge build-out of transmission. I'm skeptical that that build-out of transmission is even feasible, given the cost. It's an extremely capital-intensive proposition to build out that amount of transmission, and given the regulatory risk that attends any large infrastructure project in the United States. It is very hard to site and construct long linear infrastructure projects. The likelihood of being defeated on appeal from a NEPA, if this were ever a matter of siting and permitting by FERC, would be very high. And there's a reason why many of the transmission projects that have been proposed and talked about before have failed. It's either because they're unpopular and the citizens of the jurisdictions in which they're proposed simply don't want them, or we have problems with cost allocation in which they may be meritorious from an engineering standpoint, but they don't actually reduce the cost to the consumers. So the more of these policies that are implemented, the more expensive the transmission system is going to be, and that is going to result ultimately in a higher all-in bill to end rate payers.
So let me ask you this, too. Your August letter stated that the EPA's assertions that the EPA did not, in fact, consult the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission in its analysis of the proposed rules, quote-unquote, potential reliability effects. You go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. I did write that in the letter, yes.
So can you clear this up, and what are the potential implications of the EPA's failure to properly solicit the Commission's counsel, especially on a rule which targets 60% of our nation's power generation?
Well, I would have thought that it was fairly clear. If you engage in a large rulemaking that has profound effect on an entire segment of the economy without a clear understanding of what the reliability consequences are, not only do you fail to undertake the duties that are assigned to you, but you could potentially be engaging in policy that has unforeseen consequences that could be quite deleterious. These are the sorts of things where you probably ought to satisfy yourself that the consequences are known before you embark upon them fully.
Okay. Thank you. And without objection, I'd like to request unanimous consent to enter into the record Mr. Danley's letters from August 8th, 2023, November 8th, 2023, and December 20th, 2023, which outlines his concerns with this issue. Without objection, so ordered. I now yield to Ranking Member Bush for her 5 minutes of questions.